meeting to order for our special December 31st board meeting. Pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Not necessarily to add to the agenda, but just for your information, we have planning and zoning on the agenda. I just wanted to make note that Kyle, it won't be here, so we will go through those items. In addition to that, I did have Peggy modify the board packet that's out online, which you also received the information. I'd met with members of the Isaac Walton Lake yesterday, and they requested that their information also be included in the public packet so that others would have the opportunity to see the information as well. So I just wanted to make note of that.
Just what public packet?
The board packet that's out online.
So it was just included in the...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I just wanted to make note of that.
We got it yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, and it was sent out via email with the note that I had included that in
Yep.
the packet as well.
Okay.
And that's all I have.
Anything else? Motion to approve?
Just, did we get anything from Farm Bureau or corn growers or soybean growers to add to the packet?
No,
Okay.
not to my knowledge.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Motion by Dave, second.
I'll second.
Erica. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Carry. Okay. Moving on to the consent agenda. Anything you want to pull or additional information on?
Nope.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion by Barry.
I'll second.
Erica. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Carried. County Administrator report.
I'll make it quick. Just a reminder, next Tuesday at 7, we have our joint governance meeting at the city. I also wanted, and I believe I've told the board this before, but Matt will be returning to his position on the 2nd of this week.
Who?
Matt,
Veterans.
Veteran Service, sorry, I should have said first and last name.
Yeah.
Veteran Service, let me finish my sentence. Yes, we're excited
I
to
was
have
thinking
him.
city relation. I'm like,
No, I was talking. So yes, Matt will be returning to his position as our Veteran Service Officer on the 2nd
I
after
saw
the
him
holiday.
in Office the other day, and I said, it's been, I thought it's 6 months, so it's been gone a year.
I know,
Yeah.
when I saw him, I asked
That's
him,
right, you've been gone a year.
are you,
Yeah.
how long are you back for? No, it's good. Because, yeah, I've seen him at basketball games.
So yeah, it's good to have him back. We did get confirmation from the state. As you recall, this board did the resolution to appoint Lee Brecky as our assessor, and we did get confirmation back from the state that he has been appointed to that position for the next 4-year term. And just as another reminder for you all, our next regular board meeting next week will be the swearing in of our commissioners that got through their elections, and as well as our new incoming commissioner, and we also will have our board picture. So just
So
a
it'll look
reminder.
nice.
Yes, please.
Are we swearing in also at the same time, soil and water?
Yes,
You
Richard,
know,
you do.
that's a great question.
We usually do invite Becker County Soil and Water, and I think they were planning on that.
Okay, yeah, and I didn't arrange for the judge to be here. That was the auditor treasurer's office, so I can certainly. They are here? Okay. Okay. There.
And if they can't, if soil and water people can't make it, they have alternate, but they usually try to make it. I think.
No.
Okay, yeah, good point. And that's all I have.
Okay, thanks. Human Resources.
Good morning. The only
Morning.
item I have for all of you today is to approve the contract addendum for the LELS deputies contract. They did not have the updated longevity in their contract, so looking to get that added in for the 2024 to 2026 contract.
I'll make a motion to approve the addendum.
I'll second.
Motion by Erica, second by Dave. Further discussion? Is that the one I signed yesterday?
No,
Oh,
that
that's
was,
different.
I'm not sure which one that was, but it was one of the ones that were already approved.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
Thank you. Happy New Year.
Yeah, you
too.
too.
Same
See you
deal.
next year.
Next year.
Yeah.
See you next year.
I guess it's, wait a couple minutes, scheduled for 8:40, so.
Oh. Oh.
There's a book on our desk. Is that, is there a,
Are
something?
you reading? I didn't get one.
You didn't? You're not important enough?
Phil got it.
Is that, who is it from or what's it?
It came from Isaac Waltley. Willis dropped them off and passed them.
Is that a gift that we shouldn't be accepting?
That's a good point.
I don't feel comfortable taking such a valuable book like this. $25.
$5 gift.
Carrie, do we know for the cannabis, is the state ready for it to start on January 1st or?
No, it'll be
So-
June, I think, is the last I read
Okay.
that they're.
So all this, we don't have to worry about, I mean, we'll have it in
We
place, but
can fine
there's,
tune it.
there's nothing like,
Have some opportunity.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah. The push was to have everything
because originally it was supposed to be January 1st, right? Yeah,
in the last I heard now was summer.
okay.
There aren't too many lawsuits
That's about it too.
for the application, so.
I know the gaming part just changed now. So the e-games, they had to change their format because of complaints from the tribal communities that they were too much, they're making too much money, I think, and so they couldn't have all the bonus rounds. I mean, you don't win any more money, but people like going in those bonus rounds. So they had to modify them now, so they weren't.
So that's for next year.
Well, I think the January 1st is the start date, but they've already started incorporating those in the old, or as new games come out, they're different now. So they're not as attractive, so we hurt the state's gaming opportunities because of concern from another group. So it's unfortunate.
That's true.
See, the couple special elections probably coming up in the legislature.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, the state legislature got closer than they originally.
It's
Well,
33 to 33 now.
The Senate,
Senate.
won't change, I don't think, but they're tied right now.
Yeah,
What about that? What happened with that ruling?
Well, the one got,
The residency they have to
he's
revote,
good.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
he chose not to
contestant.
contest it, so he resigned and they'll have another special election for that seat also.
And then there's still one that's, when those
That's today.
lost ballots are thrown.
Yeah, that one, I don't think there's been a ruling on that one yet.
So it could be some changes down there.
I don't think those two seats that are up for special election, I don't think they're going to change.
No, I don't think
party,
so.
But
Well, especially the contested one, I think he won by like 65% or something like that.
but you got to reside where you're
Mhm.
running.
Well, it says 8:40, so we'll open the planning and zoning portion with open forum. Bill Hanky.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Morning, Bill.
And I wish you in advance Happy New Year coming up too. And I have two issues that I'd like to address, but before I do, you could consider the BOCA document on loan. We'd be happy to work a checkout basis with you on that,
Splitting hairs.
maybe. At any rate, the first thing that I'd like to address is the comp plan issues, particularly as it pertains to the feedlot issue and also the wake boats, although I know that's not being addressed today. What I am going to do is I'm going to respectfully request that the two documents that we were sanctioned by Chairman Okeson on CAFOs and wake boats be incorporated into whatever is finally adopted in your comprehensive plan. I realize that it may or may not be approved today, but there's critical content in there. Your constituency acted in good faith to provide information that's well-sourced and has science to back it. And so, again, I respectfully submit that it should be incorporated into the comp plan and made available as a public document as the comp plan is. Secondly, I would like to address the feedlot amendment to the zoning ordinance. And I'm going to just start out with a simple statement that as it is written at this point in time, it really should not be accepted. It's deficient for multiple reasons. It really smacks of cookie cutter. It's lacking in specificity, particularly with regards to site selection. And it really doesn't account for such items as slope, soil composition, the connectivity of the adjacent waterways that are likely present, and the fact, and I think you all probably realize that many of our adjacent fields are pattern tile drained, and certainly that needs to be taken into account. I also am concerned about some of the word and language changes in there, the shoreland to shore impact zones. They lack definition. Based on discussion that I heard at the last Planning Commission meeting, the distances appear arbitrary, 300 feet for 1,500 or less animal units, 500 feet for animal units greater than 1,500. So 1,499 animal units, 300 feet away, several thousand hogs, for instance, in a unit like that. It really has no basis other than being arbitrary. So that's a key area that I'm concerned about. The tag-on addition of well monitoring, I think that's an important aspect of it, but it lacks definition at this point in time, and I think that certainly if you're going to consider an ordinance, there should be definition with it. For instance, are you going to obtain baseline data, with it so that you can make a comparison? How many wells get sunk, around a site? What about the landowner that lives a quarter of a mile away and several years down the road comes in with concerns that my well is contaminated by nitrates? Do we have a baseline, so that individual has a foot to stand on? And then lastly, I'd like to speak to reparations. I know that it's common for people to indicate that with land ownership comes basically an inalienable rights, but also with land ownership comes responsibilities. And so manure spillage, tile drainage that fouls surface water with nitrates, adjacent wells that are a problem. Who's responsible for that? Is it going to be the onus going to be on the county and the citizenry and the property taxes that are associated with that? So reparations, I really feel need to be a significant aspect of this. when a large corporation, and again, what I'm addressing these industrial complexes, which not our local farmers, that are well established here and embedded with this, but individuals that come in and we don't even know, who the actual owner is. So how do we seek out reparations for repair and for protection of the county? And so, again, I would submit that this ordinance at best is a work in progress, and it really needs to factor in a lot more than where it is at this point in time. So I think that the nod from you guys ought to be that it needs to go back to the drawing board. So thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rick? State your name and address, please.
I'm Rick Muff. Callaway is my address. I raise hogs in Becker County and in Clay County, and I support animal agriculture in Becker County. I mean, we need animal agriculture, and we're not big corporate farms out here. We're just trying to make a living. And I have 2,000 head on one site. I mean, they would consider that big, I guess, but it's really not that big. And I know you guys have been through a lot with this comprehensive plan, and I appreciate that, and I think you're doing a good job at trying to figure out where to put this stuff. And you're putting it in rural, out in the rural areas where it needs to be. And we are not out there trying to pollute or anything. We're doing the best job we possibly can to protect the environment, and we want to protect the environment, and we're not spreading our manure. We spread it at agronomical rates to, we have to, because it's too valuable. So I guess that's where I'm at. I like the plan you guys have done, and I hope you can pass this and we can move on and get some more animal agriculture in Becker County, because we need it for the crop farmers also, because that's where a lot of their crop goes, is to animal agriculture. And so thank you.
Rick, a question for you, and this is a question probably for the board too. I did not see that we use the term, best management practices according to the University of Minnesota standards. I know that through the NRCS, when you do their programs, that's the guideline that you're supposed to use. I think that's kind of acceptable for all applicators too, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Standard?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
we could mention, that's one of the concerns that it's being over applied. Well, I think most of us that are in the business know that it's not being over applied, because it has a huge value. So
You have to have a manure management plan.
So maybe that language in there, best management practices according to University of Minnesota guidelines would be a phrase, that would help establish where that, because that's what they suggest. Anytime you're in a program through the county or the NRCS, that's what they refer to. So.
Yep. And we have to go through all this, we have to follow all the state regulations, and it's not like we don't have a lot of regulations to follow, and I've been through the process of putting up a hog barn. It's not easy. It's not easy to go through all the permits you have to get. So, anyway, thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
Rick. Matt?
Good morning. Matthew Davis, Lakeview Township. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I just have 2 points that I'd like to make. The first is on public involvement. And way back when this process started, and you guys have heard me say this before, I signed up for the email updates from the county or the consultant. And unfortunately, it's almost like it just went silent. And it got even more silent the closer we got to the finish line. And those of us who were watching, it's almost like we had to pay attention to the legal notices in the paper. That just does not seem like very good way to run an operation. It seems like you should be amping up opportunities for the public to be more involved in this process, which is going to guide our county for the next 20 some odd years. My second point is on active citizen involvement. As you know, I'm part of the Prairie Woods chapter of the Isaac Walton League. As Bill mentioned, we prepared the 2 reports on CAFOs and wake boats, and my question is, were those reports considered in the development of the ordinance and the comp plan? It appears to us as citizens that they're not. And my question for the board is, what message does this send to Becker County residents. If they want to be active in helping you accomplish finding solutions for problems that we identify, but the work that we put in goes unlistened to, are citizens going to step up and be active in helping to address these concerns that we're all going to face together in the future? I would say that citizenry is going to say, the commissioners don't care. Why should we invest our time? We'll just move on to something else. And to me, that's going to make solving the big challenges that we have as a county that much more difficult in the future. So I would just encourage the commissioners to take up citizens who want to be active in finding solutions. Use our expertise. Don't turn us away. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, man.
Willis.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Willis Matson. I live out in Toad Lake Township. Want to speak both to the comp plan and to the feedlot ordinance. As you know, we've appeared many times before this body and before the Planning Commission and at your hearings to enter what we believe were science-based, well-researched, and supported evidence in which you could make informed decisions. It's important that the documents that we entered officially be included in the record of the hearings, not only of the board itself, but in the comp plan hearing that was held before the Planning Commission. This board held a separate hearing on the comp plan. And then lastly, you had a hearing on the new feedlot ordinance. Efforts were made to expressly request that those reports be included in the record. Now, those are not frivolous, unsupported requests. Met with Carrie Smith this week and sent some information to her about the statutory requirement for management of information in government functions. And the statutes require that information that is gathered in the process of an important government action, that there be clear, complete, and accurate records kept on which that decision is based. And that's important not only for the current board, but for future boards as they go back and look at the comp plan or look at the ordinance you adopted. It's important to understand the reasoning that went in. What evidence was there assembled in support of a particular action? So those records are necessary not only for you, but for the public and for future boards and for future administrators. A future zoning administrator may be challenged as to why was a particular provision in an ordinance. That would be based on the record. And the record must be complete, must reflect supporting evidence as well as opposing evidence. Can't be selective. So we, once again, request that that be made official parts of the records of those proceedings. It's also important to note that the feedlot CAFO report was very definitive in determining that these large industrial operations are harmful to surface and groundwater quality wherever they are implemented. The mention of best management practices is a good one because it's been tested in all of the states referenced in our reports. They are using those best management practices, and especially the agricultural commissioner of the state of Michigan declared the best management practices insufficient to protect the water of that state and the Great Lakes and that surround that state. So relying on best management practices has already been shown to be inadequate. It's also clear that our document and our lead position does not oppose, in fact, very much supports conventional family-sized farms. That's healthy for our economy, healthy for our schools, healthy for our communities. It's important that they are functional, supplying good food to the community and the world. Industrial agriculture is definitively different from that conventional agriculture, so be clear. We very much support the folks here that are here talking about wanting to run their farms the way they have. Now, having said that, the proposed ordinance on the feedlot for feedlots is not supported by the record. Nothing has been entered into any of the records or these meetings that would discount any of the findings in our report. So that the findings of our report stands, that these are negative influences for the economy, for jobs, for property values, and for water quality.
You wind it up, Wells,
Pardon?
your time,
Oh, I didn't know there was a limit on.
5 minutes,
But, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, well, I will wrap it up.
open forum regulation, so
Yes.
finish it up.
I'm glad you enforced the regulations strictly. The setbacks that are in the proposed ordinance are not supported by any facts. Nowhere have they been shown to be effective. So they, in fact, are only window dressing that should be, discarded and substituted by real distances and soil conditions and slopes that are protective of the water. Water quality monitoring should be done by design by a licensed hydrogeologist that is familiar with where impacts would occur from a particular site. New Mexico has adopted water quality monitoring criteria for their large feedlots, and that could be a model for designing yours here. So thank you for allowing me to testify.
Steve, Linda, did you want to speak or not?
Yeah. I'm Steve Lindell. I live in Forest Township, and I'm a member of the Planning Commission. Today I'm speaking for myself as a member of the Planning Commission, and what would maybe help us in making our decisions, and that pertains to the feedlot type information. First of all, the survey from Becker County said that, I think in environment and water quality was number 3 on the concerns for what the people wanted, based on that survey. What I think we ran into when we're looking at that feedlot is that there was a couple things. The technical committee, either we didn't know it was meeting, or I didn't know it was meeting, or it didn't meet. I'm not sure which one it was. But the technical committee needs to meet for any of these feedlot type operations. What the feedlots have is a big impact on their surroundings, the environment, water quality. And that should be a minimum, and it should be required that the technical committee meet, and maybe more than once, because some of the stuff that they need to talk about might take a while in a discussion to figure out. The application of manure is an example. I don't know how that works exactly. I don't know what the rules are. And so you're asking me to make a decision, a recommendation on what should be done with this feedlot application. And with the technical committee, that's where we can get at this stuff. And we can kind of get the junky stuff out of the way, the technical stuff out of the way, before we have our meeting. And so we have an understanding on what's real and what's not real. And oftentimes, all we hear is what somebody's opinion is about something. And that doesn't lead to good decisions and good recommendations. So that would be helpful from my perspective to look at as far as voting to pass the applicant's application on to you. The idea of the water table water monitoring, that type of work needs to be done. And each site is different. And some are going to be maybe on a side hill. Some are going to be where there's no slope to the land for a mile around. But the regulations, the ordinances that you're proposing is kind of like an open door to abuse the ordinance. It's not specific enough. And so having more specifics as to the site, the actual site, and what needs to be done there, maybe one site needs something, the other site does not need something, looked at. And so it's not in there. You have some regulations about distances and so forth, and that's good, but each site is different. And there has to be some kind of an opening there to further evaluate these sites that we're asked to vote on. The last thing is the applications need to be complete. From my experience with the feedlot issue a couple years ago here, is that we got the application, there was a circle on the map on where this site was going to be, and it turned out the circle was in the wrong place. And then we had to adjust it. And, water management plans, things like that aren't on these applications, and they aren't complete. And we kind of resolved the issues during the meeting. And we can't really get together and talk at those types of meetings. And so it's hard to have a discussion on what things really are, what's real. And so with a complete application, if there's something that comes up that's not there, we should be able to send that application back and have
Your
it
time
completed.
is up, Steve.
Okay.
Wind it up.
So as a member of the Planning Commission, these are the things that I see for myself that would be helpful to us for looking at applications of any kind, really, and making a better recommendation to you. So thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Mr. Chair, just to comment on that, I think the Planning and Zoning has the authority to send back anytime that they if the board feels that it's not complete. So you do have that authority. It's just that you're in the minority. So that's, and you stated that you wanted to be more specific in the requirements of the feedlots, but then you go on to say that everyone is all different. So how do you pigeonhole something that's all different? I mean, you can't. You have to look at that when that comes before you. So
Well, just back at the planning commission, Ed Clem was there and testimony already closed, but I think he wanted to address that issue from soil and water perspective. If there's an application that does come in, where it's going, and because they're going to weigh in on it also.
I think the other issue also is, just to go off a little bit about what Steve said, is when it comes to the planning commission, the feedlots are in the very beginning stages, thinking of the Zerns one, because they need the approval. Once they get the approval from the county, then they go to MPCA, and that's, excuse me, when the manure management plan comes. And so to ask them to, not only the farmer, but MPCA to do it backwards, I mean, it doesn't make any sense to me for them to go to MPCA when they don't know if, that's a lot of work and a lot of money to do with the MPCA when they don't know if the county's going to approve it. So to me, it makes sense the way it's doing it. And we have to trust that the MPCA follows through with their state regulations. So I just wanted to point that out.
Okay. Was there anybody else that wanted to speak on open forum? Some came in a little late for sign up.
Could I answer that?
Can you answer it?
Can I respond to that comment, or?
Not at this time.
No. No?
No.
Okay.
Casey, did you want to just come on up and state your name?
Good morning. My name is Jay Kine. I'm a crop farmer over in Audubon Township. I'm also on the Audubon Township Board, Township Board, and I'm also the president of the Becker County Farm Bureau. We represent over 800 active members in the county, and we really appreciate all the work the board has done. I think some of the changes that we've made on the feedlot side of things have been common sense, and I think that's what we really need to take into consideration is the common sense idea that farmers already deal with a pretty overly burdensome regulatory system in the state, and it's very thorough, and we already have a lot of hoops to jump through. We certainly don't want dirty water and dirty air. We're very lucky in this county that we have a really good soil and water conservation district that works very well with the environmental side and the farming side to come to common sense understanding on where the line needs to be. There's a lot of money that's thrown at these projects already. There's a lot of time, a lot of effort that goes into it. I think it's important to understand that most farmers are very much conservationists. We have to take care of our land in order to have it produce for us and be healthy for our families that we raise on our own land. And I think it's important to remember that we have a vested stake in the continuation of agriculture over years and years to come. And we won't be able to do that if we're being irresponsible. I think when it comes to water quality issues and testing, there's never much talk about extreme lakeshore development, large applications of commercial fertilizers on lawns. You have a drought during a summer where there's no runoff going through, but yet all the lakeshore lawns are all perfectly green and watered. And you can't tell me that none of these nitrates and phosphates and things that are measured don't come from somewhere other than commercial agriculture. So it's easy to point at farming and say, well, here's where the point source problem is, when in all reality, the water quality issue is a very large issue that needs to be addressed in all forms and talked about in all forms, not just pushed over onto the side of agriculture. And so I appreciate the work that the board has done on this, especially on the feedlot side. We've already made some compromises where we've moved the setbacks back further than they originally were. The MPCA and the Minnesota state regulations are already in place. They're already very thorough, and I just appreciate everything you guys have done. So thank you, and we appreciate it.
As a question, as the president of the local farm bureau, we've been asked now today, you've heard that the Isaac Walton League wants their position stated part of the document. Would Farm Bureau like to be, I mean, if that's the case, should we ask Farm Bureau to have a position too and include that as part of the comp plan? I mean, I think that it's kind of a silly request to ask to have your paper part of our comprehensive plan. Now, it's documentation that's there to review if you want after we approve or not approve it. But I mean, we can't have every agency add their own pages to a county comp plan. And I'm sure Farm Bureau would love to have their input in and counter some of the claims that have been made in some of these other reports.
Certainly, if that's something that the board requires, we can certainly write something up. We certainly have a lot of experts on environmental policy, and if that's something that the board would like to include, I can certainly look to have that drawn up. But I don't know if it's really necessary. I think at this level here at the county, this is what we're able to do. We're able to come here, see your faces. Going forward, it's not going to change. We're always going to have an open forum discussion at the county level. And I think that those problems and those projects can be addressed here at the county. And that's the important part, is that we have an open forum to discuss these things.
I think today, and John, you have the farm background too. If you look back 40 years ago, compared to what we did then to where we are now, And the next 40 years, farming is evolving at a rapid rate. I mean, you look at what, what's going on. You're looking at cover crops and strip tilling, strip seeding, applying fertilizer without turning the soils. I mean, it's going there. I mean, I think we're going in the right direction. As you stated, the farmers are, their best interest is keeping that soil healthy and on the field. So,
Absolutely.
those nutrients are key to that.
And in that respect, the use of organic animal waste, animal manure, is so much healthier for the soil than commercial fertilizers that are full of salt. And so the more animal agriculture we can have in the rural areas of Becker County, the better it will be for crop farmers, agriculturalists. I know lots of people that go to my neighbors' hog farms to get manure for their gardens. So there's an extreme amount of benefit to having animal agriculture and a healthy system for that in the county.
All right, thanks, Jake.
Yep, thank you.
Is there anybody else before we close public forum? Hearing none, public forum is closed. Thanks, everyone. Item number 2, resolution 1224-3A, adoption of the Becker County Comprehensive Land Use Plan.
Well, I think there's still things in there that I obviously don't like, and I think there's a few goals and objectives that I just don't see that we should have in there. I think, or we should reword it. Now, I don't have the full copy in front of me, but on page 62 it was conduct economic development study. Now, I think you have to put wordage in there saying, we'll consider conducting an economic, at some point. But I don't think that we want to tie our hands to some of these things and say, there's another one, a light pollution standard. I mean, we're not gonna, I hate yard lights. I mean, as now that I'm not a farmer, that has livestock, I don't like lights outside. But there's some wordage in there that puts goals for us that, the 3.1 on page 62 says we're going to put a nuisance ordinance in. Now, I'd love to put a nuisance ordinance, but I don't know if we're going to get there. So I don't know if we just say we're considering putting a nuisance ordinance. Establish sustainable management policy standards. Do we want to put our hands together and say we should consider establishing a standard, but in that same language and on 1.2 it says require mitigation. Now, did this change since we looked at it last? Because some of that language did not.
That part I don't think is going to change.
I don't think so.
Then
no.
you're on the same page, you're on page 35.
34 is 1.6, develop
Yeah.
a surface water ordinance. Do we have any intention on developing a surface water ordinance? I don't.
I talked to Kyle about that actually this morning, and he thought it shouldn't be in there. 1.6.
He said it should be in there?
Shouldn't be, should not.
There is another
And it-
spot that
yeah.
says in the plan,
On page 12.
Under
There-
findings, it was like, we will not. look
Yeah,
at
on page
what-
12, there's a link to what the process is for lake associations to go through to try to get a wake ordinance on their lake.
So what I would ask, if we're going to approve this, to put, instead of conduct and do that, put those as considerations and not as hard things that we're going to do.
Carrie, can we make those little corrections without going back for a consultant, or?
That's a great question. I don't know if I have the
Because
answer.
Well, and then page 34 on 2.3, there was one sentence in there that said it had to do with developing, if it's ag land, that it can only be developed if it's not sustainable for farmland. It's like, well, that doesn't make sense because you have property rights too. If I have farmland south of 10 and it's a field and I want to make a housing development, how is that if it's still ag land? I don't want to tie the hands of property owners either. And then the other thing is, well, two other things. When it goes back to watersheds, then it doesn't even list Pelican and Cormorant that they should be a sub-watershed within the Otter Tail. I mean, because they are very active and they should be listed as active watersheds within the Otter Tail. And then I'm not going to argue anymore about the 1 acre zoning lots. I don't support 1 acre lots either around Lake Park. Audubon's
There's a
Richards.
lot of various corrections there. It's just stuff that you read it, you kind of skim over it and you miss it. But I think if we can make those corrections, I'm willing to move on this.
Yeah, I agree that we should change them to
Yep,
be
Consider
worded a little
instead of
different.
worded better.
I think eliminate 1.6.
I think you just get rid of 1.6, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with that one.
And
either.
2.3?
And
I can't remember how that was worded. It was just, it said,
1.6?
no, 2.3 said something about, has to do with farmland, and then it said it can, it only, and that's not the intent. It's like,
Develop recreational resources in agricultural areas only when the land's quality makes farming economically unviable. Yeah.
oh,
No,
that's terrible.
that
That's
is-
a terrible
no,
sentence.
no.
We could just eliminate it.
Yeah, just,
Pasture.
I put it up on the screen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Barry, did those distances around the towns get modified
Um,
for the 1 acre lots?
They are within a half mile. So that currently and it's not, and again, we have to state, this is just a plan. This is, I mean, I would like it to say that they should be incorporated with the city's expansion then. I mean, because, I mean, it doesn't make sense if you're not partnering up with them. And I think that should be an unwritten rule that if you're going to develop that type of development, it has to be incorporated with the city. But
it was 2 miles.
it was 2, and we got that down to 1/2 mile. So it's still I have a 220 acre field I can, if you were looking at this, you could, 1 acre lots on 200 acre field. So, but I'm not going to,
Barry,
I argued
have
my
any-
point on it long.
You have any other little corrections that we can?
Dave, did you have any?
those
No,
were, I got those too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We talked about a couple yesterday in finance.
So just for clarification, Mr. Chair, you're talking deleting 1.6 and 2.3, is that correct?
Mm-hmm. No.
Correct.
Is that correct?
I mean, you could put 2.3.
You could reword
You
that.
could just reword it. So instead of taking the word only out, say,
Develop recreational
Delete
resources in
only.
agricultural areas when the lands,
I mean, if you have a willing landowner, and I don't know, I would just eliminate it.
yeah.
Okay, that's what I was hearing. I just wanted to
Yeah,
make sure.
just get rid of it.
But on,
1.6, get rid
but
of
on page 62, on the goal, or
it. Yeah,
1.1, I mean, that's where I'd just say,
that was my other one.
consider establishing a sustainable land. I mean, because, I mean, these these things would all take time and money. I mean, so if,
61, I think it is.
page 61, 1.1, 3.1, and 3.2.
No, page 64, sorry.
Right here.
Right. Right
Well, everything's different
I know,
formats.
it is, yeah.
Economic development one?
Yeah.
No,
Under policy 1, consider conducting an
yep. Consider,
Conduct versus consider.
yes.
Got it.
Anything else?
3.1 and 3.2, develop and enforce nuisance ordinance.
Consider.
And-
development.
I
I do think we need to say consider developing and enforcing.
Consider.
Yeah.
Consider.
Because we do know that it
Past
is an
board
issue.
has looked at that some and
develop, and 3.2 is light standards.
Yeah, light pollution.
I mean, I don't know that I would love to, but I don't think that's
No.
what we're going to do.
No.
I have no intention of developing a light pollution standard in the county.
No.
you just eliminate that.
I mean, you could recognize that light pollution and say, we support reducing as much as possible, or encourage reducing light pollution. But other than that, so 3.2, encourage reducing light pollution to protect the rural quality and night skies.
Is that the last one?
That's all I had.
That's all I had on
Okay,
that.
with those changes that we can, okay, got
Just
a
to
motion
modify.
approve the plan with the changes.
I'll make a motion to approve the plan with the changes.
Motion by Richard,
I'll second.
Second by Erica. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Thanks. And you get a hold of Bolton Mink or
The format so they can make them, or we can, I don't know what format we have it in.
We can edit them or
If we can edit.
We
it,
should,
but-
we should be able to get that. They should give that to in a format, give that to us in a format that we can modify.
To modify.
It's in Word.
I mean, if
It's in
they-
Word right
if they
now.
don't,
We can
yeah.
modify it. It's
Yep.
in Word.
We certainly should be.
I know I've seen both formats, but either way, we'll
We
figure it
should
out.
require
the
that they give it to
modifications.
us in a format that we can modify.
I
We
believe-
shouldn't have
And
to
we can
type that.
Well, when
too.
Kyle sent it to us, it came through in Microsoft Word, so I think we have it on, we
Well,
obviously have it on Word. so.
Yeah, and we have the
Yeah.
ability to
Yeah.
modify into a
Yeah.
different format as well, so.
okay.
So Peggy's able to do that.
Okay.
He's a
Moving on to
technologist.
item 3, the enact the amendment to the zoning ordinance. Take cannabis first. Gary was in attendance and spoke at the planning commission hearing and here.
I was not, I was sick that day. Yep.
Okay, that's right. So,
So with regards to that, there were recommendations to include more setbacks than what's allowed by state statute. So I did speak with Brian and did some research on this. So the recommendation from the planning commission, I don't recall if it was twice or 3 times.
double.
Double, I believe, I think is where they landed. They talked about both of the setbacks that had been previously stated in state statute, which isn't allowed. So I just wanted to make that point.
It's not allowed that we increase the setbacks?
Correct,
Really?
correct.
Really?
Yeah.
We can't be more restrictive? We can say that there's none, but we can't be more
Correct, and I read it and I had Brian review it as well. So it's, yes,
And this is an ordinance that will definitely be modified, I assume, in the future, because this is.
I think it's a work in progress.
The
is
state
what I would
is
say.
way behind the ball on this too, but we need to get something on the books initially.
It's unusual. Usually,
It's usually the reverse.
yeah.
And I have asked the question numerous times, and it's pretty clear, and Brian is online if you want to ask him as well, but he did read it and review it and came to the same conclusion as I did.
Well,
And the other issue too that Kyle brought up is we're dealing with setbacks and then the use is permissible or it should be a conditional use permit for the location.
we're requiring all cannabis to be conditional use permit.
We're talking about sales or just sales right now?
Just
right?
sales.
Just sales right now, I believe,
Not
Growing.
not
Not
growers.
growing, no.
Growers will have to have a conditional use, correct?
I understood it to be
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
That's what I understood too.
And do we have size limits on,
What?
are we going with the state limits on those? The size limits on growing?
Yes, that was my understanding as what was discussed at the planning commission.
I think at this time, there's a lot unknowns up from the state.
Yeah, I'm actually have a little bit more concern about the growing, portion of it than the selling of it. I think selling, once we know who they are, we can monitor that quite nicely, a lot easier. It's the growing that, there's restrictions and fencing, security, and some of those things that will be required. And I guess I'm not real familiar with where the state's going with that either. And there's size limits, and anyone can grow their own if you're adult.
A certain amount of
But
plants.
the
Yep.
ordinance says all cannabis establishments, so that probably takes in growing and
I understood it to encompass all.
retail.
And if you are going to become a grower, I'm assuming there's state regulations that you have to go through also. Like we're just doing the conditional use permit, but they really regulate it.
Correct.
Not, okay.
So we just have to decide if we want to permit it, where it's permittable, or do we want a conditional use?
Well, in the ordinance right now, we got it as conditional use for all.
Conditional
For
use.
growing.
For growing, or,
I
but
think
for
we-
all though, right? For retail too?
Yeah,
Yes.
for all.
Well, because I could see like just for example, on Four Corners, there's two places that might do it. Well, one of, that, they're too close, so we'd have to conditionally do that.
You'd have to do it conditionally no matter what.
Yeah.
because
If they're too close,
But they're too close together.
oh,
Distance,
together.
Yeah.
We're not going to not allow one if the other one has. it.
Correct.
Well, we're not saying that they have to be,
There's no distance
One,
from
so
other
many-
business.
No, it's
Yeah.
just in residence. where
Resident, the
both
homes,
are
the homes.
oh,
Yeah.
homes.
Right,
That's
but
it.
we're not trying to say that
No,
they
no.
can't have competition.
No, but one is far enough away and the other one probably isn't.
The other thing with regards to setbacks that other entities have done is defining where you're measuring from the property line versus the
Yeah.
building. That's your other option. And I know other entities have defined that in their ordinance. And I did talk with Kyle last week about that as well. If that's the wishes of the board, that would give you perhaps
A little more distance.
a little more distance.
Yeah.
But
I would-
still require.
I wouldn't do it on property though, because you're penalizing someone that has huge green
Yeah.
space. I mean, I would do it on public, maybe public area for that business, or, if they own 20, 30 acres and it's, setback, you don't want to penalize them for having a big lot, in my opinion.
Well, I think conditional use
I would,
would take care.
right, but I think we need to set the standard. Where are you measuring from?
That's what I'm saying.
I think we
Probably
should say
The home.
the nearest public, no, if any place they have a public use for it. So if they have a public smoking area on the edge of the property, well, then that's where but if that's private, if that's not open to public use, so basically it'd be their front of their building. But if they have I don't know what this is going to evolve to, if they're going to have a smoking area or a smoking building, any area where it's open to public.
We're thinking reverse though, I think, aren't we? Away from, like, aren't we talking about distance from a private residence?
Yeah.
We're not talking about the distance where people are purchasing it at. We're talking about, okay,
You're measuring it between the two though.
yeah, but I think you go
From the residence.
building, a home,
Yeah.
to
The business.
the business.
Yeah, but if the
Not
business,
the property.
Not the property line.
if the business has 100 acres and they're a quarter mile off the road, you're not going to measure from the
No,
road.
where the business is physically at.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But if they have a smoking area right on the, put a building you'd measure from that one.
But no, I don't think,
you have-
I think you just measure from where you're selling it.
Depends on,
No,
that's what I'm saying. You don't know what you're going to get. If you're going to have a separate building or any building that
Are you thinking if you have like a business where they allow
multiple
cannabis smoking in?
test, maybe
Essentially.
have a different building for testing, or I don't know, maybe have a growing area where you just don't know. So I would say you want to,
Sampling area?
yeah, I don't know what this is going to evolve to.
They
So
allow that.
any,
I don't know.
I think this is going to be
Wow.
we can
one
change it
in
later.
progress.
Yeah.
As the state comes out more
Yeah.
defining and some of their lawsuits are settled and.
I'd say, let's just put the building then,
That's what I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
for now.
The nearest used building used or something like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so are we saying if we're looking at a school, let's say 1,000 feet from the school, so the building needs to be 1,000 feet from the school or 1,000 feet from the school property line?
I think building.
I
building.
I would say the
Building.
property line for the school, because those kids are in the playground. Put usable area.
Usable, playground would be fenced.
And I do
6 feet out
believe
of the building.
the intent of other entities when they were talking specifically about public use spaces where there's children, schools, those types of, is you're going from the property line versus the building because you get more distance.
So property line of the
School entity.
Stated in the
entity.
State regulations.
It doesn't define it. I know other entities have defined it within their ordinance from property line to property line, because again, I think the intent was to get more distance.
Yep.
If the seller the seller can split their parcel if they want to, so let's just do.
Let's do property line.
Property
Let's
lines.
go probably, and then we can.
Okay, back to
conditionally-
property.
Because
Okay.
if it's really an issue for that one, they can just go and get a survey on their property and condense their property. If they're out in the country and have 100 acres, they can single off a corner.
Yep, property line, I support that.
Yep.
All right.
Yep. Makes sense.
Anything else on it? I think future board probably revisiting this as things progress.
I would imagine too, though, the state's going to change their rules, where
Yep.
we might have to follow suit with
This
it.
is just more or less getting something in place at the time if
Yeah.
applications would come in.
Right, and I don't know that this board, or I don't recall the planning commission either talking about, regulating any time as far as operations, time of business. I don't know if that's something you want to speak to now.
I think it did say it in here.
Does it in
Retail,
retail?
8 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday through Saturday,
Okay.
and 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. on
On
Sunday.
Sunday.
Okay, I barely missed
There is
that.
in there, so.
Okay,
But I'm assuming that number, those times come from the state?
I don't know if they come from the state. I know that this particular ordinance was mimicked from Clay County, so whether or not we borrowed it from Clay County or if it comes directly out of the state statute, I can't tell you that.
I mean, I think we go with what's in here. If
And
we,
then bring
if
it
we
back from-
find out that it's,
We can
Changes
then we
and
that we
modify
have to
something
change
else.
that,
Well, I
we can
think
modify it.
this is one where we kind of have to accept that we're going to be changing. it.
Yeah.
I mean, this is, we just don't know enough about it, so.
With that, do I have a motion to approve the cannabis ordinance?
I'll make a motion to approve the cannabis ordinance with
Oh,
our
Mr.
changes.
Chair, just for clarification with the modification of
With
the
the mod-
measuring setbacks from property.
Mhm, yep.
correct?
With included,
With
From
the
property
Second,
lines. Okay.
I'll second it. And then concur with planning and zoning, except for the finding of distance because it conflicts with state law.
Yeah, I would make
Yep.
sure and
Yep.
include that.
Did you second it, Barry?
You seconded it.
Thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Moving on to the feedlot ordinance.
Mr. Chair, we did receive a language recommendation from Kyle, since he's not here, with regards to which you all have, I believe, a copy of recommended for well water monitoring once a year, with the steps included in the language. If you'd like me to read it, I certainly can.
A couple things on that. I did not see, Willis brought up a good point. We should have an initial baseline well, it should be a start prior
To
to.
state that it's a baseline.
I think we talked, had that discussion now, planning and.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that should be included in here.
Yeah, you need a baseline to start with, and then if it's yearly.
And
or-
yearly.
And then where that well, where the placement of that well would be. I mean, it should be, I don't know how you word that, within so many feet of the main confinement, the animal's structure.
Structure or their
Well,
manure lagoon or.
Well, it's 50 feet now.
No.
So if you got a house with people, the setback is hardly nothing. But if you have animals, even the Humane Society is 50 feet.
Yeah, but
So the well has to be 50 feet from the building.
between 50 and, 200 feet? The monitoring well has to be between 50 and 200 feet? There's, where does that placement go? Where should that be? Because you don't want it 3 miles away or,
No,
that
you
want it
want to have it close as you
fairly
can.
relative.
I could support 50 to 200 feet.
I don't know. Richard, you have a better idea on that, where it would be best.
Well, and then the well driller, whoever's going to do this is going to look at the placement of that well. Certainly, you don't want it downhill from anything, but that's all part of that's not a regulation, that's just a common sense way of doing it.
Is there a depth that we would look at? I mean, a minimum depth of the well?
Well, a deep well has to be 50 feet deep, or
So you'd want a deep well, though.
you'd want a deep well.
So minimum 50 feet?
I don't know that we need to be regulating the depth. of
Well,
the
that's what
well.
I mean, but a deep well has to be 50
Yep.
feet deep, or go through so much impervious material before you can have it any shallower than that.
And I think the purpose of the distance is to ensure that the well that's going to be tested is on the feedlot site, right?
Correct.
Yes. I mean, and so it's, whatever, I mean, I just thought it should be noted
Yep.
that it has to
Yep,
be
no, I agree.
Yeah.
within, on that property.
Would there need to be more than one? I mean, would that be more than one?
I don't think so.
I don't
They're
know.
expensive.
Yeah.
And you're gonna hit the same aquifer over there as you are here almost all the time, not, there's no way to know that. So I certainly wouldn't want to see more than one.
That's not going to be that's not going to be retroactively enforced on current operations.
No,
No, but I think it says new feedlots with more than 1,500 animal units. Oh, wait, nope, sorry. I'm reading the wrong thing.
this is for new. It doesn't affect the ones that are already
Yeah.
out there and permitted. So
New feedlots, yeah.
and that was
Yep.
brought up to it. Planning.
It's in here, new feedlots. I knew I read it somewhere.
Chairman, the location of the well has to be.
Mr. Chair, could I also ask that we consider in this ordinance distance from other residential homes? If within a quarter mile that they must approve, I mean, if you have over 1,500, I think that would be,
I was thinking of your thoughts on that, and I thought that would be coming more of the condition, say the conditional use, that would trigger that, you got a resident within a quarter of a mile.
I mean, if the residents are all signing off on it, then that's fine. But if you have residents, because it will have a negative, especially if they're downwind, have a negative effect on their.
I agree.
When we say residents, are we saying people that live there or property owners? Or-
I wrote down residents, what did I write? Well, my thought was permanent
Permanent resident.
Residents.
Within a quarter of a mile.
I would think that.
I think we could
Would,
incorporate
would that be put into the cup then?
Or
would that
an
be an
ordinance.
Ordinance. But that would be yeah, okay. I got you.
I don't know how I think we'd have to look at that a little bit I mean, we have to think about that a little bit, but how that wordage wouldn't have a unintended circumstance for us.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I don't know that we want to require.
Do you want to notice?
I mean, they already do get notice.
I was going to say, that's what I think you're already getting a notice through the process.
And some of them are different than others. And I've been to Mr. Muff's hog operation. You can't smell it from 50 feet away on that one.
I live on a dirt road of one, and
I mean, I had to walk right up to it and look in there, and it's still.
I won't say what I'm thinking about saying. Right?
I mean, I think.
So I think it depends on what it is, because, at least his operation was extremely clean, and there was no odor. You had to walk and stick your nose right into the screen to smell it. So.
Well, and I think.
But I agree. I don't want that either, Barry, for somebody who's living there. I don't want them to be affected by it. So I don't know how you do that.
I think it's hard because I think there's, in some ways, misconceptions of large feedlots that they're going to be odorous and it's going to be it. And I think Mr. Muff had mentioned at one of our last meetings about it, that he had many of his neighbors that were against it, and they didn't even know a year later that he had pigs in there because you couldn't smell it. So I don't know.
It depends on what the animal units are too, and
If you go to the dairy farm
they're
across the
being
road from
handled.
me with the manure pit.
That might be a little bit different.
That's a different story.
Yes.
In the old days, they had lagoons and they stirred those, and then I tell you what, you had some odors then.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that was a whole lot worse than any.
So I think.
How do you want to?
I think what we have now with the noticing on a conditional use permit is, I think, is sufficient as far as
I think so too,
neighbors.
because then you can.
I think, yeah, it just gets unintended circumstances sometimes but individually, I think, though, people should know that if there's neighbors close, that those neighbors have a very, if they're a year-round neighbor, they have a big input on whether that would go through.
I agree too.
Yeah.
That they should not be affected if.
Right.
Yeah.
But that is already part of our ordinance. It cannot have a negative effect of the.
Yeah.
And that would come back to the full board
Mhm.
for approval or disapprove, so, yeah. Anything else? Hearing none, do I have a
Did,
motion?
did we add in there use the term best management practice according to University of Minnesota?
I don't know.
Um,
We can.
Suggest or
Where's that at?
require using the best management practices I mean, I don't know, would that be a hardship? Does anyone?
Well, I think, do we have it in here, manure management plan?
Fall in line with best management
I
practices?
mean, we have a certificate of compliance when required by Minnesota regulations shall be obtained by the owner of or operator of an animal feedlot. And I believe those regulations, part 702.0100, are the state regulations for feedlot, which I believe includes the manure management plan.
Well, I think you have to have it in place when you start.
I think we
Fine,
could, I mean, I think we could add it under there.
Could-
Or we could add in number 4.
Yeah,
Utilize guidelines from the University of Minnesota as best practices. I mean, we
incorporate that
utilize
number
those.
4.
Using the guidelines, is that what you said?
Utilizing the guidelines from the University of Minnesota best management
Best
farm
management
practices.
practices is what, okay.
It's the same as what NRCS requires, when you're in the CSP program or stewardship program you use best management practices and
The only thing I want to say, if we include that in there, are we then going to be required to ensure that they're following it?
Yeah.
As if it's part of our ordinance?
it says utilize it. It doesn't say required. If we say utilize. Recommend utilization.
Yeah, I like that better. Recommend utilize.
Well, I mean, I think
Consider.
it does fall under the statute then, like you referenced.
I mean, I think MPCA is already regulating it. I do like the idea of just saying utilizing, recommend utilizing the U of M best practice, whatever.
When we have it here, it says when required by Minnesota regulations.
In all these programs and have a lot of requirements. I mean, I've been in CSP and you have to have, I have annual books thicker than the binders we have, it's huge. And so, and you have to follow those to get into these programs. And these programs are, the U.S. government and the state of Minnesota require a lot of following, and the university is just one part of that. So just consider,
We got that changed now?
I think so.
we're good.
I'll
I
play the
also-
tape back if
I also just want to make a point a little bit, just because this was in the Isaac Walton League's verbiage that they wanted, is these industrial farms are not new to Becker County. We've have muffs and briards and, slaughterhouse. These aren't new. These industrial, if we're saying industrial sizes, 999 animal units, that's what the Zurn one was. These aren't new to Becker County. And I think I just wanted to make note of that farmers are doing a good job. So.
Well, the other thing to that is we can't go back to 20 head cow pair. You can't make any money.
Farmers
You can't make money.
sustain.
What are you going to make? $300 if you're, per cow, and you're going to live on $6,000 a year? It's not.
I'll take my family, for instance. We have 75 beef cattle, and my husband works and I work.
Yeah.
We can't live off of just what we make on beef cattle. And 75 head at one point was a fairly decent size, beef herd. So.
And it would be wonderful to start over and do farm. I would love to go back to the days where you could make a living on 160 acres or 200-300 acres, and your day could be a nice relaxing day you could spend and you could have your animals, because being with your animals was the best part of the day.
You mean back when tractors cost $10,000?
Yeah. But I can't put limits and restrictions on an industry that is changing so fast but I do say that egg producers are improving their farm, their soils, and I mean, that is the biggest change I see in the next few years is soil health and preserving your quality of your soil. If you're not doing that, you won't be farming.
Over the last couple of weeks, I had a lot of discussion on this with multiple people, and their big concern is if we don't allow some of this, who's going to raise the food? It's got to come from someplace. It's the hogs, like the muffs, and some of those, or the slaughterhouse dairies and stuff like that.
Well, and there's so many people that depend on it. It's not just him, it's the people who work for him. It's bond guy, everybody depends on this, and
to give credit,
it affects a lot of people. And
to give credit to the Ike's goals, they're good goals. And I think if the findings, if they can show findings at the state level, I think that's where some of these considerations are above county. These are state and federal rules that should be reviewed. If it's truly that big of a concern, this is a state and federal concern that's where they have to make the change. If it truly is a.
Well, just in discussion with Otter Tail County Commissioner, I said, how do you handle it? He says, if we issue a conditional use there, then everything is turned over to MPCA and the state departments. We don't do anything.
I agree with Barry. That's where the change has to come. So it's a level playing field for everybody in Minnesota. We can't restrict Becker County farmers, and then Clay County's got some different rules. It can't go that way.
Okay, any other additions?
Did we decide on the well? The well distance?
Well, it is 50 feet. It's got to be 50 feet.
A deep well of between 50 and.
So I think all that is regulated by the health department in the state of Minnesota, and they're very.
But the monitoring well.
Well,
we want it on the property
then
site.
It needs to be. I like 50 to 200 feet. You're probably not going to find a different aquifer in that distance.
We just have to give some guidance, so it's not 2 miles down the road.
Right.
So 50 to 500 feet.
Or can we say on the same property as the,
Well,
I guess the same property,
Would be.
you could have
yeah, it could be a long
500
ways.
acre.
I think with 50 to a couple hundred feet.
Yeah,
From the
50 to
facility.
200, it gives them room to
Yeah.
put it somewhere out of the way, and you're certainly, at 200, you're certainly going to be in that, you know.
And then also just adding the baseline.
The baseline.
Baseline testing
Yep. Then how often?
yearly.
Annually?
I think the recommendation was.
Was annually, and then
Yeah.
it's sent to the Department of Agriculture, NPCA, and the Becker County Soil and Water, and the DNR.
We didn't address any road agreements. Are we looking at
I think that's, to me, that's
Individual.
back in the conditional use.
individual? But, I mean, I think when the individual ones come forward, I think road agreements, depending on where it is in routes, are essential for townships to have some
I think
security.
that's probably something we should require in our conditional use for that type of application.
Because, you take out a couple miles of township road, that will take their whole budget.
I think if we're going to require it in a conditional use permit, we have to have something in our zoning, right? I mean, because the conditional use permit is
We
only
could-
those 7.
We could just say, consider road agreements
Yeah,
for
that's
application.
because if you're on a county road, you're not gonna go get
Yep.
that wouldn't be in there and it wouldn't affect. Like,
Consider road agreements if you're on township roads.
On township roads, okay. So adding that, is that what you're saying? Okay.
Anything else? With that, call for a motion to approve?
We want to make sure that this wording is in there when we do the testing is done, that the
Yeah,
sample
that,
shall be analyzed.
That was my intent,
Yeah.
was to
Did
add.
we read this aloud?
I think we got sidetracked, to be honest.
Another question. Now, I noticed the change went from shore impact to from shoreland to shore impact, but that was not, that's not buildings, right? There's no, we can't
There's a difference between shore impact and shore,
I know the difference between shore impact and shoreline, but we're not saying it's changing the setbacks for buildings.
I didn't understand that
Which-
it did.
type of
Basi-
building.
Like a hog building or there's still setbacks if you're talking waters, there's still setbacks. So we're not changing the setbacks on that, correct?
We're changing it from 300 to 500, right?
Yeah,
Right, but it said changing the shoreland
To impact.
to impact.
Shall not be located in the short impact zone.
Are we talking just buildings or?
New feedlots
well, the feedlot cannot be
shall not be located
the
in,
shore
yeah, it would be the
impact
building,
zone.
yeah. Anything to do with the feedlot can't be in the impact zone. That's what I.
You're
that's
asking
the way I
about all
read
of
it.
the
What
buildings
I'm-
and animals.
What I'm also saying, what I'm also saying though is that's, we're not saying that I'm just saying that there are other standards. If you put a building within a water course or a bluff, there are still setbacks on any buildings this would not supersede those setbacks.
That's a great question.
Because those are state setbacks. Is Kyle on the phone? Kyle, you understand my question? We're not,
I don't, I'm
I
not
don't think he's on there, no.
when I read that, I don't think you can supersede the setbacks from the state regulation, so.
I would agree that that's probably accurate.
So we
Should
have
not be
that-
located, I mean, if we're just talking about property, I mean, but you can't be in the shore, you can't build a building within the setback. I mean, if you're outside if there's a water course and it's if it's registered like an environmental lake, you still can't build within so many feet of that, even if this ordinance says shore impact zone, because the impact zone would be considerably less than a setback for a building on a environmental lake.
Right.
So that, I mean, I don't think, we can't, but I mean, you can't supersede that. So you just note that, or there are still setbacks on these for any structure?
For any structures.
No.
That would
Yeah.
be,
Clarifies it a little bit. Anything else?
No, if you just,
Motion to approve.
if you wanted to read that, or.
Read that email.
oh, yep. Let's see here. Water well monitoring feedlots with over 1,500 animal units shall be required to submit an annual well water sample to Becker County. The sample shall be analyzed by the Department of Agriculture, MPCA, Becker County Soil and Water, and the DNR. If any contaminants meet a threshold of concern, the group shall make a recommendation to the Becker County Board of Commissioners on how to alleviate the concerns.
Also, we had talked about this before, is this new feedlots
Yes.
with over
New.
1,500?
New
Yes.
feedlots.
New feedlots.
And I think you put I think you note in there that existing ones do not have to, I mean, I think it should be noted, existing do not fall under this.
They're grandfather, okay.
Or we could say new feedlots as of
The state.
This date,
this date.
okay.
1/1/25.
Yeah.
Yeah, 1/1.
1/1/25, okay.
Anything else?
I hope not. I've got a lot of notes.
Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Erica, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Richard. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Carried. Thanks. Moving on, item 4.
I'll just make note of that, and this certainly could be brought back. It wasn't an item for action. Kyle's intent was just to give some information on, there'll be a newly formed joint planning board, which will include the city, the county, and the Lakeview Township with regards to some land that was being annexed into the city. So he can certainly bring that back. There was no action that was requested on that, so.
Yeah.
That's all I have.
We're motion to adjourn. We are adjourned.
You are.
Adjourn.
It's on the agenda.
Happy New Year to everyone.
Get your book. I'll take your book.
See you next year.